Welcome to the Innovation Exchange. Innovation requires curiosity and grit. I'm Elizabeth Thelen at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. UW-Whitewater is powered by the spirit of innovation. Every episode, we bring together the people who make that happen. Our business partners, the students rolling up their sleeves, and the faculty who bridge the classroom with real-world impact. If you want to hear how organizations are solving real problems, how students are contributing in meaningful ways, or how curiosity can drive innovation across your region, you're in the right place. So I'm here with Arik Johnson. Welcome to the Innovation Exchange, Arik. It's great to have you. But before we dive in, I like to ask everybody kind of the first question, signature question for each guest is, what does innovation mean to you?
Thank you, Elizabeth. It's been a real treat to get invited on your show, and very grateful to be here, and I'm looking forward to our discussion. I think innovation for me in the work that I do usually has to have a revenue impact for it to really be innovation. In other words, a lot of folks think of innovation really as doing something new or something different, maybe even disrupting something old that was already there, and sort of the principle of creative destruction and Schumpeter kick in. But I actually think it's not innovation unless it's having a revenue impact of some kind, unless it's opening up a new market that gives you access to customer segments you didn't have access to before, or having a contribution to your cost of goods sold by making your organization more efficient. Either one of those two things, either making you, somehow it's got to make you more profitable and make your organization more sustainable long term.
That's fantastic, and I agree. I just talked to somebody today who has lots of inventions. What would you compare maybe the difference between invention and innovation?
I think an invention is something novel that has not yet found a customer.
Okay.
And an innovation is something novel that has found a customer. In other words, you got someone to buy it.
That was quote-worthy right there. Producer Gracie, please capture that.
Right on.
So at the university, we in our mission actually say that we are powered by the spirit of innovation. And our definition right now is also turning the idea into a solution that adds value. Right. That's to your point, from a customer's perspective.
Absolutely.
So there you go.
Customer perspective is really the only thing that matters. It almost doesn't matter how innovative you are. If you can't find a user or a buyer or a marketplace that gets excited about whatever you've invented, it's very novel and original and creative, I'm sure, but it won't have much of an impact on the world.
Mm-hmm. And we love to have many impacts
on
the world.
Impact is it.
Impact is it. So we haven't really introduced you. So let's talk Arik Johnson. We've known each other for, I don't know, minimum 10 years.
At least.
Yeah. At least. But can you tell our audience a little bit about your background? And now you are an executive in residence here at UW-Whitewater.
Yes, very grateful to be one of the first EIRs here at Whitewater's College of Business and Economics. And, my background is not business, incidentally. I come from really the political science, history, international relations world. I studied Russian at Madison and, always envisioned myself being either a diplomat or a secret agent of some kind was actually my aspiration in my teenage years. And though I thought it'd be great to sort of grow up and be James Bond and all those fun things. Unfortunately, they're not hiring for that actual job. So I had to go out and make a job. And so in 1995, I started a company called Aurora, WDC, also known as Aurora Worldwide Development Corporation. And that was vague enough that I could make it into almost anything. And I decided to make it into a strategic market and competitive intelligence firm. And beginning around 2005, so about 10 years in, we added a software business. And about 10 years after that, we added a meetings and training business called Reconverge. And of course, when the pandemic hit in 2020, the meetings business kind of went to sleep for us. We've got some plans on how to bring that back and bring it back to life. But really, Aurora today is two businesses. First Light is our software business, and we serve it's about 45 or so Fortune 1000 corporations, most of them here in the United States, doing strategic marketing, competitive intelligence, management and administration of their workflows and systems. We're right now updating that entire software stack into the AI era. So we've got a huge AI initiative happening within Aurora. And then the other half of the business is called GPS, Global Professional Services. And we cover about 180 countries around the world doing human elicitation work, which means that when clients give up on finding the answers for themselves, they come to us. And then we go out and we find knowledgeable sources who speak the language, know the industry, have proprietary knowledge about the subject matter our clients are interested in, and then we get them to tell us the answers that our clients most covet. And then often we're involved in helping them ask better questions. And that actually led, of course, to my brother and I writing a book called The Missionary and the Mercenary last year, which is all about how to ask better questions.
The better questions is amazing. I just listened to an innovation podcast from a friend of mine in Paris, France, and she had a speaker on and talking about asking a what if question, what is possible, and it brought together an artist and the racing industry. It was fascinating. So I won't digress too far.
What if questions are the best.
The what if question.
Because it gets you into your imagination and allows you to speculate and to speculate about scenarios you may have to confront someday. Even if they never happen, you've done the work of imagining what it's about. And that's really, a huge part of human learning is based upon making that effort.
So one of the things I wanted to do to frame our conversation, which we haven't even really gotten into, but we're going to talk about higher education, innovation in higher education.
Right on.
And there is the Chronicle of Higher Education. Normally I turn to many business books rather than education writers and journals about education to learn about education.
Right.
But that's me. I mean, I'm also from kind of the outside, but I love it here at Whitewater. I've been here about 3.5 years. And there's a great one from the Chronicle of Education, The Innovation Imperative. And they have it's kind of a long quote, so bear with me.
Yep.
And let's see if my glasses will work. Colleges and universities today face unprecedented challenges. It's repeated so often that it becomes a truism, a polite acknowledgement of the elephant in nearly every conference room. The challenges keep getting more intense, but most colleges and universities are still grappling with how best to respond. Never has the pressure to innovate been greater in academia. But in many ways, academia is not good at innovation. It's good at producing new knowledge, advancing new ideas, rolling out new programs, introducing new improvements to this or that process. But many colleges and their leaders seem unable or unwilling to rethink what they're doing comprehensively enough to do something truly different, much less truly new. This is a long sentence. Even where it's evident that business as usual will no longer suffice. And I believe our chancellor, Dr. Corey King, and leadership, we are embracing innovation, but it's still challenging. So what are some of your reactions just to that? Because I know you work with other universities and colleges as well.
Yep. Well, I think about 20 years ago, there was a demographic blip that resulted in a decrease of high school seniors beginning a couple of years ago. And of course, all four-year colleges and universities are suffering through this demographic donut hole, whatever you want to call it.
But we've known that.
We've known that. You've seen it coming
for a long time.
For a couple decades now, exactly. And I think the cost structure question that we talked about a second ago, adjusting the cost structure to be in alignment with the revenue projections that an organization can enjoy at some point in the future was not done, I think, by most four-year colleges and universities because of how they define themselves. And, when you define yourself as being in the baccalaureate business, that is a very different business than being in the learning business. And I think Whitewater's impressed me. One of the reasons I signed on as an executive in residence here is because I see the mindset as being a very future-oriented mindset that is the correct one, which is we can't rest on our laurels here. We can't think about how awesome we are or how we've achieved superiority in the minds of our buyers or any of that stuff. Whitewater has hustle. And I think that's what differentiates Whitewater in many ways for me from a lot of other UW system schools as well. And by the way, I'm a proud Badger, Madison graduate myself. I don't see the same level of hustle as I see at Whitewater out of Madison, and a lot of that's just based upon the notion that there's entitlement there. And I think that the sense of entitlement that you see at many universities is where this absence of innovation motivation comes from, because they feel so entitled to enjoy the benefits of their elite and illustrious education and background and curriculum vitae and all the things that go into reputational arrogance, is how I'll put it. I think that actually takes away the motivation to innovate. And I think the motivation to innovate comes from two very human sources. And they're not very positive sources, but they're very, very powerful. One of those is fear. Fear that you will be made irrelevant by a world that's changing faster than you are is something that motivates human beings to do hard work. And I think I don't necessarily see fear at Whitewater, but I do see motivation at Whitewater, not resting on past success, but wanting to reach higher and be bold, I think is Chancellor King's motto, right?
Right.
Be bold here and, try and reach for the stars and, reach for the moon and land among the stars, as my dad used to say. The other human force is greed, frankly, and the notion that you want to enrich yourself and the people who have a stake in what it is you're trying to do. Again, not a very positive emotion, but it is tremendously motivating for human beings. So this kind of sort of duality of fear and greed, one thing makes you do something new, the other thing makes you try and do it well. And I think that combination is really where motivation comes from to innovate. Lacking those two fundamental human motivators, I think you're going to always struggle to get people excited about doing things that might upset the apple cart, disrupt the status quo, make people uncomfortable, or even make them question whether they're on the right track. That's something I think leaders are going to be defined by in an AI-first future, where human beings are largely there to take accountability for the results that are produced by an organization, as opposed to necessarily working all the knobs and pulling all the switches and all the tedious, repetitive tasks that AI can do so much better. Humans are going to have to really be there to make decisions and have judgment.
Let's pause there, because I want to get to that.
For sure.
So the motivation for innovation, well, a couple things. So hustle, you call it hustle, I call it grit.
Yeah.
I actually, my mouse pad in my office says that, because I feel like here we have a lot of it, like from faculty, staff to our students.
No doubt. I run a conference in September called GRIT. In fact, GRIT in our conference stands for growth, risk, impact, and transformation. So GRIT is a wonderful way. We should do it here in Whitewater. Absolutely. Maybe a satellite event.
There we go.
We'll do it here in Whitewater.
Okay. Growth. What is it?
Risk,
impact,
and transformation. And we hosted our very first one in downtown Chicago last September of 2025.
I remember.
We'll do our next one in September of 2026.
We'll have a satellite office here.
And we'll try and do one.
At our innovation center.
You're on. I'm with you.
So hustle, grit, we definitely have that. I'm on a project that is new. There's multiple universities, and even the person, I'm just going to leave it vague, but the person running the project says, oh my gosh, this is great. Like, you guys get in and get it done.
Right.
Like, we're figuring it out, and we're going to figure it out together.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting observation. But so the motivation piece, you talked about fear and greed. Can you talk about purpose in your motivation to innovate? Because I often think of, what's my purpose?
Yep. So I think of purpose as being a calling, you know, and I think very few people in their professional careers can actually say that they find their calling, the thing that they're uniquely made for, their vocation, so to speak. And though I think vocation is something we want all young people and later in life learners to try and eventually discover and pursue, I think there's a lot of disappointment or jadedness about the ability to do that when you see so many unhappy people working in very high-powered, well-paying jobs who then apparently appear to be miserable. And so I think there has been, a great sort of disinterest by younger generations, particularly Gen Z and Gen Alpha, in wanting to pursue a corporate quote-unquote job. And I think that's good. I think that's actually very
They say there's more, I know I'm interrupting, but they say there's more and more the younger generation choosing entrepreneurship.
Absolutely right. Because
And
it's
that's
meaningful.
why.
Because
It's
it's meaningful work. And I think that's the real driver is no one wants to spend the next 40 years doing something boring that makes them $1 billion if they're miserable the whole time. And I think that's a huge, huge part for my own children. I have children who are all Gen Zers. And I tell them all, even if you go out and get a corporate, quote unquote, corporate job, have some kind of side hustle or maybe a few that give you some fulfillment beyond the day to day. And I think you're going to see that much more in future generations where you have more of a portfolio career. You have maybe a main thing that's like 40 or 50% of your income. And then the other 50 or 60% of your income comes from entrepreneurial activities or even, quasi-volunteer work, things where you have a missionary zeal to want to see something improve about the world, and then you are going to find a way to make money at it.
Yes. And the thing that comes to mind, we did UW-Whitewater, we facilitated for Biz Times, actually, as part of one of their bigger events. But we talked about intrapreneurship. So and we teach that in some of our classes. We have an entrepreneurship degree. We have all kinds of clubs, and it cuts across all of the College of Business, and students cross-discipline across the university can attend and be part of it. But the intrapreneurship, I think students forget, or even adults, students, you can be an entrepreneur in a company.
Right.
Because you're starting new programs, new projects. It can be sometimes a little more challenging because that's how I feel, what I'm doing here at UW-Whitewater.
Yep.
It's being entrepreneurial, but in the university.
Right.
And it's awesome because you kind of get the best of both.
Well, I think entrepreneurship is where you're testing the limits of what you're permitted to do within a usually very structured environment. Universities are some of the most structured environments you're going to find in the United States today and around the world for that matter. I think large corporations have caught on to this idea, the ones that have survived, that is. The ones who haven't survived never caught on to the idea that you have to empower your people and give them a reason to want to do something new. Mm-hmm. And then all the best ideas come from those new activities. And those new activities, by the way, generally don't make a lot of money from a profit standpoint, but they produce a future cash flow that the organization is going to come to rely on. And one of the great examples I love to use is Gmail. Gmail was in beta for like 20 years. But Google created an environment where 20% of your time was able to be spent on your own pet project. And one of the engineers there came up with the idea of putting ads in email and giving it away for free. And that's how Gmail was born. And of course, Gmail uses all the subjects that you're talking about in your email to target you with much higher value ads. And as a result, they turned that into a huge part of their AdWords business as Google. And of course, the business has matured quite a bit over the last couple of decades, but Gmail was entirely based on an intrapreneurship strategy. And I think the examples are all over the place. There's thousands of examples we don't have time to cite.
Well, I would just say our dean of the College of Business, Paul Ambrose, actually does think that. He does give and empowers faculty and staff, people like me, with some funds. But you take risks and you place bets and then you see what's coming next. You and I are working on a project. Maybe we'll come back, talk about a joint venture sometime soon on this podcast. Stay tuned. Well, that's a tickler for later.
I love it. Yeah. And I think, complying with the way organizations have to manage their protocol, a university is subject to a lot of stakeholders having a say in how things are going to turn out.
It's crazy when I'm in it, but I get it, but it can be frustrating.
Well, and as an entrepreneur yourself, Elizabeth, you know how much easier it is to be alone because it's only you who has to make the decisions about what you're going to do or not do. And though you have to go out and recruit help from other places and oftentimes hire it and spend money out of your own pocket, maybe sometimes you can't buy the groceries on a Tuesday. You got to wait until a Thursday because you spent money on an investment that, is going to pay off for your business later. But those are the types of decisions that I think larger organizations, more structured organizations traditionally that move a lot more slowly, like a university environment would, they're going to have to learn how to embrace those dynamics and really begin moving at the pace of thought, because the ideas that come out of your student body is a great example. The ideas coming out of your student body are going to rapidly outpace the organization's ability to uptake those ideas and then capitalize on those ideas. And I think there's an old saying by Jack Welch. It's probably the only saying I like that Jack Welch ever shared, former chairman CEO of General Electric, that when change is happening faster on the outside than it's happening on the inside, the end is near.
Well, I did not know he had that quote, but that is sometimes what it feels like,
It's
right?
powerful.
It's
Yeah.
very powerful in many, and not just in the university at
Every
all. It's
organization.
everywhere. It is absolutely everywhere. But bringing it back to learning and talking about, I like what you were talking about, the portfolio of careers. I remember listening to a speaker. I'll think of it. He's an author, written many books, so much that I can't. But it inspired actually my original business. But it was, and he talked about You Inc. It's probably one of the first people back in the early 2000s, late 90s, and that you are your brand. And people know this. I know your listeners are going, yeah, I know that already. But 20 plus years ago, that was a new concept. But we're finally kind of fully embracing. And just to remind people, I'm Elizabeth Thelen at UW-Whitewater, and you are listening to the Innovation Exchange with Arik Johnson, our executive in residence. And kind of back to what we were digging into is higher education, how we're going to approach the future. There's a word I've heard you use many times because we have other meetings is talking about the interrogator.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that and how that integrates with change in higher education?
Well, so the term interrogation is something that we use in the intelligence world to describe what happens when a knowledgeable source doesn't want to tell you the answers to your questions. So there's an interrogation that happens there. We're using that verb in a new way because we have AI systems that are producing output for us that we might have used humans to produce that output in the past. And human production of that output, original creation of that output is still required, but it's often just too much. It's too human intensive to do the repetitive or tedious tasks associated with that content generation. So the way we've sort of framed up the role of humans in my corporation, Aurora, is that humans are there to be customer-facing builders. And I've told all my people this, by the way. And if you're not customer-facing and you're a builder, you better get customer-facing because I'm going to need you to be customer-facing. Otherwise, I'm not going to need you. Is what that boils down to. And
but I don't like to work with people. What am I going to do?
You're going to have to get over it, unfortunately. You're going to have to get over it. You're going to have to learn how to love to work with other people. Anyway, so customer facing. But if you're a builder but not customer facing, you got to find a way to get more customer facing, and vice versa. If you're a customer facing person but you're not building anything, you got to find a way to start building things. Customer facing builders is really our vision for our own people in the next several years and the role that they're going to grow into. And that's going to involve new job descriptions, new titles, new compensation schemes, all the sorts of things that go along with managing change like that. But it's worth it. And if we don't do these things now, we will be ill-equipped to confront the future that confronts us very, very soon. And so customer-facing builders is how I would define the role of humans. Now, when it comes to interrogation, that means that the output of your AI systems have to be interrogated by a knowledgeable subject matter expert who can then continue to develop and build their own expertise, so much so that not only can they train those systems to be smarter themselves, but they can also catch the inevitable errors, hallucinations, outliers, mistakes, and all the rest of it that comes out of AI systems today, which is going to be persistent. That's going to be around
need
for a while.
The human.
Humans are more valuable than ever, and humans will be more valuable than ever. They're just going to be doing different work, and that work is going to boil down to being accountable for the results that your AI-generated work is going to be producing. So AI-generated work is going to be doing the majority of the tedious, repetitive tasks in organizations, but humans are going to have to be accountable for the results that work produces.
And that's similar to one of our last podcasts was with our other executive in residence, Robert Orzogo, about AI, and we were talking about how to curate it and how do you keep up. But both of us, all of us, I think, of course, I stole this from somebody else, but a techno-optimist. So there are people who are just like doomsday on AI and even in the university environment.
Right.
But I think, and we're embracing it. Like we not only we have a new degree, but even in our classes and our faculty. Of course, there's people who don't like change.
Yep.
But it to your point, to your staff and your team, it kind of doesn't matter. You need to be figuring something out.
I think it was General Stanley McChrystal who said that if you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance a whole lot less.
Yeah, so I love him because he wrote Team of Teams.
Yeah, Team of Teams.
Is that where it is?
It's probably in that book. Yeah, but that's the quote I think of that he. I believe it was him that said that. And so, embracing change, I think, is really important, particularly if you're an educator, if you're someone who delivers lessons and tries to produce educational outcomes for learners. That role is going to transform itself because your individuals in your classroom, the people who are doing the learning, can't be treated as sort of a giant mass of unwashed, idiots that you're trying to convey some knowledge into. They each have their own individual advantages and disadvantages. And I think that's really the role of the educator in the future, to understand the advantages and disadvantages of each and every individual so that they can tailor educational outcomes that will produce exactly what that individual needs from that particular learning experience. And it can only be done with AI. The traditional systems that we have to do educational delivery and learning uptake on the part of the learner just don't scale. And so we need to use AI to make those custom outcomes not only accessible but affordable. And this is the point: is you've got to reorganize the way in which you deliver your product. In this case, an education to a young person, a learner. And reorganize that delivery mechanism so that it is as profitable as possible. And by profitable, I don't mean makes a lot of money for the university. I mean it's very efficient. It doesn't cost any more than it has to. So teachers are going to become really orchestrators of outcomes, and learners are going to have to get used to having extremely tailored learning experiences. And frankly, I think they're going to love it. I see my own children, and as I
think they're already there is a movement for sure already doing that. But I'm going to go back to something that you said about advantages, disadvantages. I had a conversation with one of our faculty, Dr. Russ Cation, runs the several centers on campus. But we got into a discussion about how he does customize based on some of his students. And we're also known for, I didn't know this about 3 years ago, that when I got here, that our Center for Disabilities is amazing. And it's kind of like, just part of our standard operating procedure here, but just in the things and accommodations we make without AI, but your how you treat all individuals and learners. Obviously, we can come up. So I feel like we've moved, and even in K-12. So this is where I was going to go next, a little bit with K-12, because I used to serve on a school board. But they call them in the past the individual IAP. The individual IEPs, academic plan. And I was like,
educational,
right.
What do they call it? Individualized education plan.
Well, whatever. Yeah, IEP. They probably all have different. But I was like, why don't we just have those for everybody?
We will have them for everybody.
Everybody, yeah. That is, I think, what you're saying. Before we had it for only special groups. Right. Obviously, they needed it. Yeah. But today, kind of what the learner is looking for. Yeah.
In the post-war era, sort of 1950s, is when the special education world sort of blossomed in American K through 12 education. It was really designed, I believe it was cerebral palsy, because there was a lot of kids matriculating into the school system with cerebral palsy, and they needed to create accommodations so that those kids could learn on an equal footing with kids who didn't have a special need. And so today, of course, special education also extends into all sorts of areas, particularly Asperger and people who are on the spectrum can benefit from a lot of those accommodations. But I think it's going to be a democratic issue eventually. We have to think about the fairness of it. Is it fair, in other words, for a quote-unquote normal kid who doesn't have a special need to not benefit from an individualized education plan? And I frankly think all children and young adults are going to eventually have IEPs that are specifically designed to help them and them alone produce the educational outcomes that are going to make them prosperous, contributing members.
I'm going to go further. I actually think the younger generation, if they've thought about this, already they might not call it that, but they actually have their own IAP.
I think you're right.
They are coming and looking, who's going to do it the way I want to do it and
make it
work for me
exactly.
Versus years and years of the antiquated system 100%. Has been, I'm just, it was like manufacturing, right? We're manufacturing students.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that the ability to deliver exactly what every learner needs was a pipe dream when you thought of a teacher who would have to work with 30 students in a classroom, for example, and by the time you're through the first 5 or 6, you're completely blasted. You're worn out. You're exhausted, and you can't do that. No, you can't. Human teachers cannot have the ability to sustain and maintain that level of quality throughout every single day that they're teaching across 20 or 30 students. It's just not humanly possible. So occasionally you have a superstar teacher, and those are the ones you remember, right?
Right.
I've got one or
totally. We, by the way, both of us love teachers. I
yeah,
actually wanted to be one. I teach corporate stuff.
yep,
But you are right. It's exhausting. And I think let's talk just a little bit about that role.
yep.
Whether we call it a lecturer, a faculty, or teacher, they're the facilitator. You used a different word. I like the facilitator.
Orchestrator,
But
is the word I typically.
facilitate.
Yep.
You're kind of just saying, here's the outcome that you want. Here's the path to get there.
Right, exactly. And I think that's where you're going to see more EIR type activity
Yes.
in university,
Right.
because you're going to be bringing in people like me who I'm out in the trenches. I'm doing the things that need to be done in order to turn a buck at what I'm doing, and bringing that real world experience into the university setting, and then sharing those lessons learned with students, and allowing the students really to choose whether or not the remarks or lessons that I have to deliver are of interest to them, or if they want to go to somebody like Robert. And Robert has a completely different background than I do as an EIR, and obviously has different lessons to share, different life experience to share, and different outcomes that he can produce than the ones that I can produce. And I think that's wonderful. I think you're going to have 100 more EIRs like Robert and me, and the more diverse, the better. I think the more background and educational and life experience diversity you can get into that room, the more options that students are going to have when they decide, which of those lessons are going to be most important to them.
And where can I go, to get that?
Exactly.
So what other comments would you have about innovation in higher education to meet the needs for employers?
I think what's going to happen
today.
Yeah. Well, I think what's going to happen in the next few years is there's going to be a lot of consolidation. I don't think that's a big surprise to anyone who's a policymaker or an administrator in the higher ed world today. Not all the universities out there today, particularly here in the United States, are going to survive. And that's more demographic than it is competitive.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see the cost structure of the universities that do survive change pretty radically. And then you're going to see this sort of winner takes most element that you see. Harvard's got something like $900 billion in its endowment. That number's wrong, by the way, but it's a lot of money. And so you're going to see these very lopsided, results accruing to universities that really don't look that much like other universities where the vast majority of students will attend. And so I think, what you'll see universities doing is what really Madison did for me as a young person. Was I arrived in Madison as a boy, really, and I left as a man. I learned how to grow up. And all the things that I learned there, though I studied history and political science, international relations, and whatever I want, I mostly studied the rowing team, frankly, because I was an athlete at school. And by the way, athletics was probably the biggest part of the contribution to my later career than the actual lessons learned in a classroom. So there's all sorts of growing up that I think happens between 18 and 23. For some people, it's more like 24, 25, by the time they're done. And that's okay. Everyone is going to learn at a different rate. And I think that the force fitting every student, every square peg in a round hole is yesteryear's higher ed. I think what's going to happen is really mass customization. You're going to have individualized degree programs whereby no two students in any given school or college are really going to be studying the same thing. The orchestrator's job is going to become more valuable than ever, because you have to now talk to Elizabeth and Arik, or your producer, Gracie, and help the three of us all produce a different set of results with the same raw material. That's an incredibly valuable human
manufacturing,
job.
Again, I hate to compare us, but it's a great comparison.
It's a perfect comparison.
And then the pull, right? It's what the customer needs. And we could talk about customer all day long of the university, but in this case, we're talking about student, but the employer, what do you need to hire somebody? What about, I'm going to take a total different turn. We have time.
Go for it.
What about students who don't choose the traditional 4-year baccalaureate? Where Where do we fit? What can we do more of with them? An offering, as you like to say in competitive intelligence.
Yeah.
What's our offering?
Tremendous question. I think the ability to learn the skills and tools that you need as an autonomous and sovereign individual, whatever it is you're doing. Two of my daughters, by the way, my two daughters, the older one wants to be in the culinary world. She eventually wants to have her own culinary business of some kind. She loves to bake. She loves to cook for people. She loves to invent and innovate in new flavor combinations and stuff, things that I love to enjoy, but I could never actually do, as a producer of those things. Her little sister wants to be a cosmetologist, which, by the way, my mother was a beautician for over half a century. And so her grandmother would be very proud of her if she was here to see what her granddaughter's up to. But those are trades. I would consider those to be extremely high value trades. And your ability to maximize your income in those trades is almost exclusively based on your ability to be an entrepreneur. You will never, as a hairdresser, be able to rent a chair in somebody else's salon and maximize your income as a worker bee sort of in the hive like that.
Yeah, because there's only so many people you can, unless you come up with a new product. So again,
unless you're
entrepreneurial innovation, right?
What's his name? Who's the guy I'm thinking of? I just blanked on the guy's name. Paul Mitchell.
Oh, I actually almost said Paul Mitchell.
Did you say Paul Mitchell?
No, but I was thinking it at you, and I thought that can't be who you're thinking of.
It's a perfect example because he came up and developed all these formulae for great products that actually improved the results that the customer would enjoy, and then he made it available to every hairdresser in the world. All you had to do was buy his products, sell them in your salon, and it was a brand new source of revenue for the stylist. And you're going to see those business models innovate a lot. We're seeing it now. I'm not, I'm not informing anybody of anything new. I think a lot of the beauty business, and a lot of that happens in social media today. Of course, TikTok and Instagram and all the places where people go, to see what's hot, what's trendy, what kind of hairstyle should I get? Now, I shave my own head. I give myself my own haircut most days of the week. So I don't really know anything about that world, but it's a huge business and it's fast growing. You're going to see, I think, making people feel like they look like $1 million. There's never going to be a lack of demand for that.
We have a large marketing program here, and that's what those students do. They have real world projects. There's another, people don't even know this, so I'm going to give them a shout out. We have a sales institute. A lot of companies don't know, we got to hire a salesperson, which, I consider myself in sales, but, I got trained. Here, they do the same thing in their sales institute, and they're teaching it. And it's awesome because the partners come in and they have these role plays and they win competitions. It's really amazing. But I am going to take us back to kind of our role. Maybe you want to close it out. I don't know. But the role of the university with the non-traditional. I'll reframe that question to the non-traditional student, because we have alumni who come back and then they do the MBA program. But you don't even just have to talk about Whitewater, but the traditional 4 years.
So I'll continue with my cosmetology example because I think it's really, really relevant. Getting a cosmetology license in the state of Wisconsin takes about a year. It's like an 11-month program. You can get it at a tech school. It's not expensive. You're out and done, and then you're out earning money and making a living. But you don't have your manager's license yet. You don't have your own business yet. I think a lot of what cosmetologists, stylists, beauticians, whatever you want to call that profession, a lot of their success is based on how well they can sell and how well they can market, how well they understand their business operation, how well they understand their pipeline. And I remember my mother having her appointment book on the desk in the beauty salon, and I'd look at that appointment book, and she had people down for a shampoo and set 6 months from now. And I said, "Why do you have this lady in your appointment book 6 months from now?" She's like, "Well, that's my pipeline. I can count on the fact that Bernice is going to be here 6 months from now for her shampoo and set. And 2 months before that, she's going to be back for another shampoo and set. And 2 months before that, which is today, when Bernice is coming in, I'm going to give her a shampoo and set. So there's this idea of cash flow that really you can be a fantastic stylist and end up being broke and going out of business because you don't understand the business world and the needs of running a business very well. I think universities like Whitewater and CoBE in particular are going to have to tailor programs to those types of needs. And it might probably boil down to having a clinic or an institute or some learning experience, kind of like...
well, we do it with continuing education.
I was going to say, Madison used to do it with kids from the agricultural world. So you'd go to the, they call them the short coursers over the summer.
We have camps and conferences.
You spend 6 weeks basically learning how to be a farmer. You're going to spend 6 weeks in Whitewater learning how to run a beauty salon. That I can almost predict with 100% certainty that the trades are going to need university-level instruction to be successful in their work and to be successful in their careers. It's just that I think we're so in love with the baccalaureate as the cornerstone offer of the offering, which is a business school. So the business
I wish you could all see him visually.
I'm moving my arm.
Say it again.
I'm trying to keep the lights on in here,
awesome.
Elizabeth, in case they shut off on me. So the
say that again, though.
Yeah. So a university and a business school is an offering. The offering is the configuration of work and activities and assets and people who are delivering the offers. The offer is from the perspective of the buyer, in this case, the student, the learner.
Or parents.
Or the parent, whoever's paying for it. Whoever is the economic decision maker behind choosing that offer, that's what matters to them. And it's very situational. It's very individual. I think that's where that whole mass customization of learning comes in, is you're going to have to customize. And we do. I think Whitewater does a pretty good job of making sure that every student who comes here feels like they belong to a larger body of student learners, but at the same time, they're getting a very tailored experience. I think that tailoring is going to intensify, and it's just going to get more and more precise. And we're going to have the AI instrumentation to be able to do that. The tooling and skills to be able to deliver that experience to learners is happening right now. And
I know. It's not even a year from now. It's today.
Exactly.
It is today.
100%.
I'm looking at dials on our board here, and it's just cranking them all up. So kind of last words on sort of this innovation and what we have to do, whether it's here or not in a university setting, and to not survive, but to thrive. What are some key things?
I think we first of all have to stop being filled with fear about the relevance of what it is a university does and the colleges within a university. And, I think of a university really being as a collection of professional schools. You might come here to learn how to be a teacher yourself, and go to the School of Education. And I think Whitewater is extremely well known.
The most teachers.
Exactly. You teach the most teachers. You're also the largest business school in the state, and you produce the most business graduates as well. And I think, those are fantastic accomplishments. I think what's going to happen is the university is going to have to get over the fact that humans are not going away. They're not irrelevant in the future. They become more important than ever, but they become more important in delivering different value to those buyers and those market segments than they have in the past. I think the notion of standing in a lecture hall with 300 other kids, which I did at Madison, most of my freshman year, I was in giant...
Yeah, I did it. 2 other UWs.
There you go.
Oshkosh, Milwaukee.
We were in a giant sea of a lecture hall, and the university, the professor couldn't have said my name to save his life or her life. And that is going to have to change. I think the educator themselves is going to have to become deeply familiar with what each of the people that they're serving, really. And I think that's also part of it is humility. I think a huge part of what sets Whitewater apart for me from other universities is that there's a deep sense of humility on the part of both faculty and staff and administration too, that you're really here to deliver a learning experience that equips and prepares and readies a person to be a grown-up in the world and go out and to be a contributing and prosperous member of society, someone who goes out and does things other people can't do. And I think as long as higher ed, secondary ed continues to pursue those goals and doesn't let up, don't let your foot off the gas, Whitewater, is, keep your foot on the gas, because other universities are going to come to the recognition that that's how it's done. I think that's the opportunity that Whitewater and CoBE in particular have to intensify the rate of change to the point where humans are doing the right work, machines are doing the right work, and the outcomes that are being produced for the buyer, the customer in this case, the learner and the stakeholders who want to see that learner succeed, whether that's an employer or a parent or a spouse, for that matter, if you're later in life and coming back as a non-traditional learner. I think all of the stakeholders are part of this ensemble of educators who are helping the orchestrator deliver that result for the student. So future's bright.
Well, we're going to end it right there. So that ensemble of stakeholders around the orchestrator. So if you're listening, that's with Arik Johnson, our executive in residence on innovation exchange, and challenging all of us really in the stakeholder realm of how to help universities, as well as in particular the student, get what they need in an accelerated fashion.
Precisely. Yeah. Speed it up.
Speed it up.
And it's when we're going to, again, the pace of change inside has to be happening faster than the pace of change outside. That's the watchword. And thank you, Jack Welch. God rest your soul.
Thanks for joining us on Innovation Exchange. If today's conversation sparked your curiosity and made you wonder how your organization could partner with UW-Whitewater, subscribe and share this episode with someone who's ready to innovate with us. You can find all episodes and partnership opportunities at uww.edu/CoBE/podcasts for the College of Business and Economics. That's uww.edu/CoBE/podcast. I'm Elizabeth Thelen, and we'll see you next time on the Innovation Exchange. Be curious.